So you've been noticing that cops are a little jumpy in America, and they shoot a lot of people, especially black people. I was reading this article in a magazine called Quartz, and it said
the magazine about rocks.
About rocks.
Yeah.
And this is by somebody named Sarah Kenzior, and she posits that Freddie Gray verdict, the U.S. police officers who really get punished, but they might get rich. And she goes on to say, she says that in the United States, police officers can kill without consequence. That's the and what is her evidence of this? She says the latest confirmation of this injustice came today, June 23rd, when this was written, when Baltimore officer Cesar Goodson Jr., 46, was found not guilty of all charges related to the death of the 25-year-old Freddie Gray. Previously, on May 23rd, police officer Edward Nero was similarly acquitted in Gray's death. So that's her number one evidence that cops can kill with impunity. Within 2 weeks of that shooting, a GoFundMe page was set up. Oh, she's talking about Darren Wilson here. So when Darren Wilson killed Mike Brown in St. Louis or in Ferguson, so she's talking about the Ferguson. They say the Ferguson effect is cops are afraid to kill people anymore. We know that's not true.
Yeah, that hasn't borne out at all.
She's saying the real Ferguson effect is that cops can kill with impunity and then they get paid money afterwards. That's what she's saying. The real Ferguson effect is that cops know they can kill with impunity and they'll get rich afterwards. And she points to Darren Wilson, who killed Mike Brown, shot 12 bullets at him. The guy was unarmed, whatever, because he was black and he looked like he was a demon. So within 2 weeks after he killed Mike Brown, a GoFundMe page set up to support Darren Wilson raised $225,000. Despite online protests, a second GoFundMe was soon created, raising his total to $433,000. $500,000 you get for killing a black guy who's unarmed, if you're a racist. In November 2014, after St. Louis prosecutor Bob McCullough chose not to charge Wilson, a Wilson fundraising organizer revealed that an outpouring of additional donations had raised Wilson's total to roughly $1 million.
Holy smokes.
So she says the real Ferguson effect is the way Americans have learned that they can kill young unarmed black men and face no legal repercussions, and may even receive a financial reward. In a country built on slave labor where lynchings was viewed as entertainment, unpunished killings of black men are hardly new. So this is the real Ferguson effect. In December 2015, Timothy Loman, the officer who shot and killed Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old Cleveland boy playing with a toy gun in a park, was acquitted of all charges. There's nobody you can kill as a cop where it's going to be bad for you. In February 2016, the city of Cleveland sued Rice, the Rice family, Tamir Rice's family, for not paying the $500 bill for the ambulance that took their dead son to the...
What? Wow. I thought Cleveland sucked before.
Wow. Rice's lawyer described the attempt at financial extraction as an insult to homicide, and it was retracted later that month.
Well, that was kind of them.
That was nice of them.
Yeah.
That was nice of them. In April 2016, Cleveland itself had to pay up $6 million, was awarded to the Rice family after a civil lawsuit. But even then, police would not admit guilt. The court filing states there was no admission of wrongdoing. But they paid him $6 million. But we didn't do anything wrong. Here's $6 million of taxpayer money. Doesn't come out of the retirement fund of the cops who killed him. Doesn't come out of the cops union. Doesn't come out of the police department's funding. It doesn't. You know where it comes from? You. They go out and murder a 12-year-old kid, and then you pay for it, and they don't pay a goddamn thing. Nothing. That's our culture. And I just showed you another video. One of the police jobs, one of the safest jobs in the country. Safest jobs in the country.
I got to be honest, I didn't know Cleveland had $6 million.
I didn't know they had $6 million either.
I mean, if you had $6 million, would you leave your city like Cleveland?
Even when an officer accused of killing an unarmed black man is actually charged, the financial outcomes can be questionable. In November 2015, Chicago officer Jason Van Dyke was charged in the 2014 murder of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald after a graphic video showing Van Dyke shooting McDonald 16 times in 13 seconds. Wow. That same month, a GoFundMe allegedly created by Van Dyke's wife raised over $10,000 before GoFundMe shut it down, claiming it violated their terms and conditions. GoFundMe refused to do the same thing in the Darren Wilson case. Isn't that weird? Isn't that funny? And in December 2015, Van Dyke was indicted by a grand jury on 6 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of official misconduct. That's the first time a Chicago officer had been charged with first-degree murder of an on-duty fatality in 35 years. 35 years. Wow. So this is all going to her point. The Ferguson effect is that cops can murder with impunity and then they get money out of it. This is the first time in 35 years, and only because the videotape surfaced.
What was that one 35 years ago?
Yeah, what was that?
What was that?
What was that?
It was probably some fat Chicago sergeant pulled a black guy out of his car, walked him in front of the cameras, beat him to death, and said, I thought he had a gun.
Again, a multi-million-dollar settlement was offered, with the McDonald family receiving $5 million from the city whose officer had killed their son. So that $5 million does not come from the police. It does not come from that guy's pension fund. It does not come from this. It comes from you. Then you pay it. So she goes on to say perhaps the most notorious example of the real Ferguson effect is the May 2016 auction of the gun George Zimmerman, whose killing of a black teenager, Trayvon Martin, in 2012 was deemed self-defense. Zimmerman has remained boastfully unrepentant since his trial. But the sale of the gun for $250,000 revealed a new level of shamelessness and showcased again just how the murder of black men has been monetized in America. So George Zimmerman walking around with a $250,000 for killing him.
I have a question. If you're the kind of person who will give happily to a GoFundMe for a racist criminal, essentially, I don't think you get to complain about taxes.
Ha! I agree. If you don't complain about this, about all the money that they're paying out, I mean, all the money that Los Angeles pays out for police brutality every year, I mean, they had to pay out millions of dollars for the way they treated the Occupy Wall Street people. None of those cops got fired. That money didn't come out of there. They didn't have to change how they police. They're never gonna. They're gonna do the same thing next time. And you know what will happen? They'll get fined, and the citizens will pay a fine. Nothing happens to the cops. Nothing happens to the commanders. Nothing happens to the police chief. Nothing. Nothing happens. They abuse citizens, and then you pay for their abuse. And they don't get fired. They don't get fined. Nothing. That's our culture.
And what's worse is we've had however many of these cases in the last 5 years. And not once has the Justice Department said, okay, that's it. We need to rethink how policing is done across the board.
Not happening.
That's got to happen.
Not happening yet. Still not happening. Still, they still say bad apples. They still say most of the cops are good. They still say that stuff. Most of the cops lie when another cop commits a crime. Most of the cops cover for murderers. So most of the cops need to be supervised because they're potential criminals. Most of the cops. Most. Not all. Most. It's a culture problem. It's not an individual cop problem. It's not a bad apple problem. It's a culture problem. Those guys who shot that guy in the street in Tulsa, those guys who shot Laquan McDonald in Chicago, they all got, their friend, they all lied immediately. Oh, he wasn't responding to commands. He was coming at us.
And by the way, by Chicago standards, that's progress. Because it used to be that Chicago's police officers, a cadre with them, would kidnap somebody, take them out, torture them, and kill them.
They still do that.
I'm telling you, if they took a fraction of the amount of money that they estimate they're going to pay out in lawsuits
Yes.
in the next 10 years,
Yes.
they took a fraction of that money and studied the way effective policing could be done without these kind of things happening, they would fix it. They would not have to pay out those tens and tens of millions of dollars in lawsuits that they are guaranteed rock solid going to have to pay out over the next 10 years. All of these municipalities.
Country's biggest cop union just endorsed Trump. Sleep tight, America. It's a great country, great culture.